Welcome, everybody, to a brand new podcast called The Inside Line, brought to you by SIA. My name is Kristin Carpenter, and I'm going to be co-hosting this show with SIA's president, Nick Sargent. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Kristen. Always fun to be here.
And welcome to fall. How was your summer, Nick? What were you guys up to?
What happened to summer? It just got to be fall like yesterday. The leaves are changing, and, certainly we haven't experienced any cold weather, but it's the leaves are changing, which is the first indication. But the summer was good. A lot of biking. I got an e-bike. I am now in turbo mode everywhere. It has really reinvigorated my love of cycling. I'm a lifetime cycler, but I've been mixing it up with my road bike a ton, and I still like climbing and I still like riding. But I really, really enjoying the e-bike, and certainly brings a new element and a new dimension to the sport, which is fun.
That's awesome. It's a mountain bike, right? Any mountain bike?
No, they say it's a mountain bike, and you're still working just as hard. And people think there's that throttle on it, but you are the throttle. So it's as much of a workout as ever. So it's really, really exciting and fun.
That's awesome. I know.
How about you?
Park City has some of the best trails in the universe. I've been doing my best to try and, stay active on my bike. I'm hoping to do more of that this fall. I was able to do one road event, and that was the Triple Bypass, one of the best events I've ever done. It really was. Literally, it felt like I was in Europe. There were thousands of people there at rest stops. I've never seen anything like it. So you basically ride from Evergreen to Avon. And I think it is like 11,000 vert. And it was actually super fun. Really good food at the stops, and just a lot of nice people. So it was fun to be out there with our freak bike friends, And
there's probably a lot of our SIA members that were riding alongside you and you didn't even know about it.
Yep, you're probably right. So that was amazing. And, I realized some of our listeners actually might not know who you are, Nick, even though you're the president of this fine organization. Would you mind giving us just a really quick intro?
Well, I mean, it's always difficult to talk about yourself. It's never why you're doing these podcasts, I would imagine. But really, it was a long time ago when I started. I called a guy who was running the race department for Dina Star Skis for every Friday for a year. And this is before iPhones. This is before, even having a physical calendar where you're writing things down. You weren't calendarizing things in those days.
Was it stone tablets?
Almost. It felt like it, just etching it in with my hammer. And, but I called this guy for a year every Friday at 2:00. And, sometimes this was like just as people were ghosting you into voicemail, or he would just pick up the phone and we would talk for a while. But long story short, he ended up hiring me after a year. The guy was, probably sick of me, so he hired me. But nevertheless, it was tuning skis and doing race service, in the Women's World Cup. And, that's really, a very non-glamorous job, long hours, hard work. People would say, well, you traveled all around the world and you've been to every resort, which is a fact. But I've been to every hotel basement in every resort around the world. And that was my existence for 5 years. And, but more importantly, it really gave me that, original platform where I was meeting people. I was in the industry. I thought the industry was massive. I thought racing at that time was probably what everyone's thinking F1 is today. But there's a whole crew behind these sports that make it happen that you never see. And they never see the light of day, to be very fair. But
what year was this? I'm just curious.
That was in 1993 to 98.
Awesome.
Something to that effect. But through that, I was able to get a job with Solomon after working for Dina Star Lang for 5 years. And that really helped propel me in the space of marketing, and events, and then eventually partnerships. And that was a pivotal time as, the internet was just on its infancy or in its infancy. Nobody really knew what social media was. Facebook didn't exist. And then that landed me at Burton Snowboards, where I was really charged with helping to grow the awareness of snowboarding, which was kind of a double-edged sword because Burton was so core, and the employees were very core. And I think I, probably thought at that time that I made a very bad mistake coming from a hardcore ski background to snowboard, and I didn't snowboard. So that changed very quickly. I learned the sport. But it was a really exciting time to be at the growth of not only snowboarding, but the industry, based around, evolution of the internet, evolution of social media, really the evolution of, cell phones and how that was integrated into the business. Anyway, those experiences really groomed me perfectly for this job, which is, really helping to solve and drive problems and solution for the industry, with a strong snowboard background, strong ski and winter sport background. They blend together nicely. But, I think, and I think turning the question a little bit to you, we've both seen this industry change from, the tablet, making phone calls to get even a job to, now we're worried about compliance, and now we're worried about things that were so far out of our purview, and now they're right in front of us, and it's our job to solve those issues.
It's funny. I actually, I thought that in, kind of the 2017-18 retail apocalypse, that's when I first started podcasting, because I really felt the same way you do. Like, we have to provide a community and a place for people to have these conversations so that they can not have to reinvent the wheel. But then going into COVID and coming out of that and looking at the inventory challenges and all of the product and messaging compliance that's happening. And then you add tariffs on top of that. I mean, literally, you can't make this up. I almost feel like instead of a podcast, we should have started a Netflix show. And I think people would have watched it like they're watching a car accident, just... But I really feel like I also want to say it's remarkable. We've been very adaptive. We are actually nimble. We have a PhD in change, right? And I think that this show is so well timed. And I'm really grateful you guys decided to launch this at this time.
We really didn't have a choice, to be fair. And if, we're looking at the horizon, we probably should have started this a few years ago, coming out of COVID, or maybe during COVID when we had so much time. But, we were talking about the industry, and as we were preparing for this podcast, we're talking about a number of different things. And, I was reminded, and it struck me that where we got all our communication was the magazines, pre-internet, and then the trade shows. And you'd go to a trade show and you'd see your buddies, your colleagues, and you would hang out, you would work, you would, maybe stay up a little too late, all under the vein of catching up, sharing information. And, I was hired by the SI board to change that. Funny, a lot of people think I'm, the devil, by getting rid of the trade show. And, what the hell was that guy thinking? That was the board's idea. I was just the guy that was charged with, finding change. And certainly we saw trade shows starting to weigh down, and, people's spending was moving into different directions. And here we are today. So this is where this is really, really important. This is a place where we can gather. We can bring experts to talk about, the past, the present, the future, which we're going to do. So get ready, put your seatbelt on. And the excitement is that it's easy to talk about what's wrong with this industry or the issues that we're trying to solve, but there are so much opportunity still in front of us. It just requires us to talk about it, really process, these issues, and then plan. So that's really, where I see this podcast going. It's the conversations. I'm really excited to bring in, industry leaders, not just from brands, but from retail, from resort, inside, outside the industry, to really kind of round out perspectives. So I think the timing is good. Probably could have done it earlier, but we're here today, and we're gonna put an A+ effort into this thing.
I always look at, going back to the pandemic, and this is the last time we'll talk about that, is basically that's when the institutions started falling. And in our world, I think the big one was the trade shows. And I do think there are some holes that need to be filled, but I'm very excited to talk about and report from our great events that we do throughout the year. We have a Western and Eastern event and a global summit. We'll have all the details in the show notes. And then also when you're going over to Europe, we're going to be bringing European leadership voices to this because it truly is a small global industry today. It is literally a tiny global industry. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but you know what I mean? It is not North America.
Do you remember, I'm gonna date ourselves a little bit here because we can. Do you remember when you first learned about ISPO, forever ago? And I remember learning about it and then ultimately getting, approval from my company to go. And I didn't really know what I was going to. And I went, I went to Munich, and I had been to Munich before, but definitely looking at it through a different lens. And then you went to those halls and you saw, one hall was snowboard, one hall was alpine, one was footwear, one was, ice skating, Zamboni, whatever. And that's when you really understood the size and scope of this global industry. 16 halls or 18 halls, I can't remember the number, but, and it was exciting, different country, you're meeting new people within your industry. And then, if you're fortunate enough, you would then go to the snow show and you would see familiar faces from ISPO and vice versa. But that was kind of your first real breath of the size and scope of the industry and the global platform that, we have and we work with. And I think it's fair to say, with a lot of consolidation in winter that, resorts have consolidated, brands have consolidated, retailers have consolidated, and everything's kind of concentrically shrunk. And that's the industry we have today. But beyond that, it's a global environment. And, the internet connects you globally that much quicker. Information, the number of people that are going to Japan right now is mind blowing. I thought skiing in Europe was going to be like the big thing. And, but again, this is a global sport, and, we're doing this, in that capacity. So it really makes more sense today that we're talking about global compliance, tariffs, which are global, they're reciprocal, remember guys. Those are things that we're going to talk about. And we have these, groundbreaking partnerships with EOG, European Outdoor Group, for those, we are putting our best forward to create, the best global products that we can create with our partners. EOG, we're also working with WSR, Winter Sport Retailer, as well as the backbone of specialty here in North America. But how can we continue to drive the conversation, create new products that are going to give more of a global perspective of our little industry, and what is it going to look like for us in 3 to 5 years? But I think certainly we have a responsibility to talk about it. We have a responsibility to think global. We have a responsibility to our members in the industry to do that. So I think it's an exciting time.
I remember my first trip to ISPO. So my first job in the industry was with Winter Sport Business under the great Bill Tandler. And they also published Bicycle Retailer. And I was all of like 25. I had never been further east than Texas. And all of a sudden I found one day at work, they sent me over to cover ISPO on this, heavy old laptop. And literally, I just remember I had no passport. I had no credit card. I had to get all of those things. But that was my launch into winter sports was under Winter Sports Business Trade Publication. I've always had a journalist's heart, and going over there and just being absolutely blown away at how huge it was, and then coming right back and doing the show in Salt Lake. It was kind of a crazy experience, but I fell in love, and it's interesting now because I think there might have been some separation along the way over the decades, but it is definitely coming back together. I have so much respect, and actually I'm really excited about SIA becoming a virtual bridge, if you will, over to Europe and making the industry, one again in terms of globally, and how can we actually like modernize what we're doing here and over there together. And so it's not separate anymore or fragmented. It's one industry, solving these problems and making it easier to commercialize, go to market, and be great to our consumers together. So I really think that's, to me, one of the most exciting aspects of this show. And it's just funny to think about ISPO. When you brought that up, I was like, oh yeah, that was kind of a huge moment in my career.
Remember when there was a funny migration back in the day where you would go, I don't remember the cadence exactly, but it was something like, X Games, ISPO, Sundance, Snow Show, and then you throw an OR if you were, dabbling in that space. And it was like a 4 to 5 week grind. But as horrible as that sounded, it was the most exciting part of the year because you really blended the entire industry and all the events together. And that's really where we are today. And, going back to your comment around, we're talking globally and, our own experiences back and forth. But, all of these issues today, regulations, compliance, tariff participation, climate, diversity, this is all right in front of us. And these are the modern day problems that we have to solve. I remember when marketing and magazine photo shoots were the big problems, where, when, how, was Freeze a really valuable publication, or was it all about skiing? But we've solved those issues, and we've been there, we've done that. But now we've got these modern day issues, which are really taking a toll on our industry. And that's why this is really important still. And again, having a place to talk about it, having a place to share in the journey is really going to help a lot of our members get through this.
I went to the Sundance event, the SIA Global Summit in March of this year, and there was so much news over the 2 days of that event that came out on those panels, and a lot of networking and everything else. And it was astounding to me, and I know to you and your team, that nothing left Sundance. There wasn't, nobody reported on it. It was just great information that stayed there. And thankfully we had like great participation from all over the world there, but it really stayed with the people who were there. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about, is actually like bringing that to light, contextualizing what was discussed there and sharing the news. I think this industry desperately needs a trusted news outlet. And I think SIA is perfectly positioned to do that in this show.
Yeah, we do a good job. Staff does an amazing job of pulling that together, getting the right topics, getting the right speakers, and really driving the right industry participation to attend. And that was a great event. If you've never been to Sundance, we're talking the ski area, not the film festival. We were at the ski resort. It's a beautiful, unbelievable location here in Utah. But I will say we do a great job of coming together. We, as an industry, we love those moments when we're face to face. We work well, we talk well, we solve well, we do all this stuff together, which is fun. But to point, a little negativity at that event, those participants leave and then they leave the conversation. Yes. And so we need to do a better job of getting people to be active, not just for 3 days, but for 365 days. We need to get people really invested in solving these problems, finding solution, and then, creating an opportunity for us to share with the rest of the industry. And we're going to do that again in Snowbird, March 23 to 25. 2026. And so we'll have that opportunity again, which I'm really looking forward to. And again, no bias to any other state or ski resort here, but here in Utah, we've got great snow consistently, and certainly in Little Cottonwood Canyon, it's a blessing. But beyond that, we are doing some regional events too. We've got one in Westminster, Colorado,
October 21st.
21.
Yep.
And then we've got one in Burlington, Vermont, October 23. These are hot spots within our industry, and we really urge people to come and listen, and engage, and start to build towards Snowbird. Again, like we say this, we're only as good as our industry. We're only as good as the people that are active. So, we've done these events in the past. We're going to continue to do these events, give our people and members the ability to come together. So, that's why we went to ISPO. That's why we went to Snow Show. It was that opportunity to come together.
And I will say, we're fun. We're a fun group. We would be selling vacuum cleaners or insurance.
I don't know. My kids tell me how lame I am, but I thought I was fun.
I'm pretty sure you're still fun, even though you do crack a lot of dad jokes. They're pretty funny. And I will say, like, we're keeping that spirit alive too. So it's not all, dour work groups. Most people were skiing multiple hours of the day when I was up in Sundance. So, the fun is always there. We keep the culture and spirit alive of this industry. We welcome the younger generation and learn from them. It's not just about us talking to people. We're talking as a group and learning from each other. And that's really what we're going to bring to life here on this great podcast that we're going to produce and grow a community around it. So we're really excited to have everybody here listening today. And I really couldn't be more thrilled to be working on this with you and the SIA team, Nick.
Well, we're excited too, and believe me, it's a team effort, and we're going to do our best to get the best speakers and the best participants, and we're going to be working together, Kristen and I, in getting the right questions, challenging. We're not going to put you on the spot too much, but there might be a moment or two. But we are really looking forward to just getting the conversation moving, have some challenging conversation, and end on a high note. That's why we all do this. And, we started with, what did you do this summer? We might want to end with, what are your plans for the winter? Because it's one season away. That's
crazy. Great. The next time you hear from us, we're going to have a guest to share. And I also want to just remind everybody, we're going to be covering the summits, reporting from the ground there, and also the SIA team's trip to Europe, which is coming up here in September. We're also going to get some great sound bites and hopefully some interview clips from there. So we're really going to bring everybody together from, both continents. And you can find all the great resources you need and the show notes today at www.snowsports.org. And we look forward to talking with you next time. Thanks so much, Nick.